There's a specific kind of car every motorsport enthusiast likes. It's called a homologation special. These street legal road cars mainly exist so the manufacturers comply with regulations stating that their race car has to be based on a production road car. The amount of road cars that have to be built to comply to these rules vary from series to series. Most of these cars are highly sought after unicorns with a fanatic following and regularly manage to get sold for increasingly higher prices. There are some usual suspects you may have heard about, like pretty much every Group B rally car and most of the GT1 Le Mans racers, like the Mercedes CLK GTR and Toyota GT1. But the world of homologation specials reaches far beyond these few examples. So join me as I take a quick look through motorsport history and look at the many different ways manufacturers put racing technology in everyday road cars. To start things off, we gotta look at the early days of homologation specials and maybe try to find the first one. Many people will be quick to point towards the Lancia Stratos. Sharing only a slight resemblance to the original Stratos Zero concept car, the Stratos was purpose-built for one thing and one thing only: rally racing. And to take the fight to the Renault Alpine A110 that had won the first season of the World Rally Championship in 1973 and was faster than Lancia's rally car at the time, the front-wheel drive Fulvia. To replace it, Lancia made an extremely agile mid-engine car that quickly became a dominant force. Less than 500 road cars would be made in the end. The competition car made its debut in 1974, but there have been several earlier examples of car brands making road cars with the sole purpose of going racing with them. Almost every Group 3 GT racing car in the early 60s was one. Porsche, for example, could have sold a lot more 904s if they wanted to, as there was a lot of customer interest in it. But they only built just over 100 of them, as that's the minimum amount they needed in order to pass the regulations. It's pretty hard to pinpoint who exactly started this trend. What we do know is that one of the early trendsetters of the homologation special hype, and one that lots of people, mainly Europeans, forget about, were the Americans. More specifically, the drag racers. In the early 60s, pretty much every American brand was making so-called superstock drag specials or factory experimental class cars. These were ordinary family saloons fitted with massive engines, some of which were very difficult to daily drive. But you weren't meant to go shopping with these cars anyway. They belonged on a quarter mile. Year after year, Pontiac, Dodge, Ford, Chevy and many more were making increasingly specialized quote-unquote road cars most people couldn't even get their hands on, as they went straight into the hands of drag racing teams. To pick just one random example, let's take the Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. The base model Fairlane had just over 100 horsepower from a 2.6 liter straight 6, while the Thunderbolt with its 7 liter V8 was capable of well over 500 horsepower. And it didn't stop there, as almost everything in the interior was thrown away to save weight. Think Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera or Porsche 911 GT3 type stuff, but on a big American muscle car. This trend was also found in NASCAR, where numerous aerodynamic versions of regular cars appeared, best examples being the Plymouth Superbird and Dodge Charger Daytona twins. But while the aero upgrades made the race cars more competitive, they didn't always help with the performance of the road car. Aerodynamic front bumpers with tiny grills work well on the banks of Talladega, but they're not useful in a traffic jam on a hot summer's day. This seems to be a very specific category of homologation specials, and maybe even the most recurring one. It's the kind where manufacturers take a normal road car and put different bodywork on it, so they can then use that bodywork for the race car. In some cases that bodywork ends up being detrimental or straight up useless. First example, the 1999 Peugeot 206 GT. Peugeot wanted to use their new small hatchback for the World Rally Championship, but there was a problem. The minimum length of a WRC car was set at 4 meters. This wasn't a problem for Subaru and Mitsubishi with their 4-door saloons, they had length to spare. But Peugeot's car was only 3.83 meters, so it was too short. To fix this problem, Peugeot took 4,000 normal 206s and stuck giant front and rear bumpers on it to get to the minimum length. They called it the GT, and if you expected to get a rally car for the road, you didn't. It wasn't even the fastest 206, as a 2003 206 RC, meant to celebrate a rally car's success, was worthy of being called an actual hot hatchback, as it had around 180 horsepower, some 43 more than the GT, that was just a regular hatchback that looked like it was stung by wasps. This just add more stuff principle also happened for cars in circuit racing. In Super GT, the Nissan 350Z and Honda NSX both had homologation specials that featured absurd bodywork modifications. There was the Nissan Fairlady Z Type E, that much like the Peugeot, featured longer front and rear bumpers, and the Honda NSX-R GT. Compared to the others, its bumpers stayed relatively tame, but it did feature a massive F1 style air intake. That didn't work though, as it was not connected to the engine at all. It was only there so Honda could use it for their Super GT car. They built 5 of them, but only sold 1 to a private customer. And if you think stuff like that doesn't happen anymore today, then think again. The new Evo 2 version of the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 now features a roof scoop. Previous versions didn't have this, but ever since Lambo came up with the STO, which has a roof scoop, Lamborghini could finally take advantage of it and create a new air intake system for the race car. On the road car, just like the NSX, it's completely useless and not connected to anything. But at least Huracan STO owners could look at their motorsport-derived aero features on their car. In some cases of homologation specials, you couldn't even do that. Early 90s touring car racing saw several everyday cars like the one your dad drives duke it out on track. They looked like normal cars too if you ignore the flashy sponsor decals and lower ride height, as they had to have the exact same bodywork of the road cars. But then suddenly they started growing little wings and spoilers anyway. Alfa Romeo was one of the first to do this, as they had created 2500 so-called Silverstone editions of the 155. Pretty much a regular 155, but now with a tiny wing and splitter. Ones they didn't even put on themselves, but instructed the dealerships to do so. Many brands almost instantly followed this idea, and in case of Audi, you weren't even allowed to use them. When you bought one of 2500 Audi AT Quattro competitions, you legitimately got a box of aero parts like a splitter and wing extenders, and a note essentially saying, "Thank you for your purchase, these are the bits you can have, but can't use." Audi hadn't even bothered with the paperwork that would make the parts pass the notoriously strict TÜV rules in Germany, so they weren't even road legal. If you wanted to put them on your car anyway, it was your responsibility to get the paperwork done or risk getting a fine. These cars, even without the added aero, still count as a homologation special. Something that can't be said about stuff like the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale and the Renault Clio V6. These arguably have a lot more racing pedigree compared to the Alfa and Audi, but they technically didn't need to be made at all. They were only built as a homage to their respective one-make cup racers. Renault and Ferrari were the bosses of their own series, so why would they impose strict limitations on themselves? The reason why Renault went ahead with building a bunch of V6 Clio road cars anyway is simple. It's because they could. Sometimes though, brands that initially started out without the homologation special for their race car are forced to build one anyway. 6-cylinder BMWs were fast in the American Le Mans series, but just not fast enough to beat the Porsches, so BMW shoved the V8 in a couple of M3s so they could then use that engine in the race car to start hunting down some 911s. It worked perfectly, and Porsche was instantly annoyed, even though they used the same kind of tricks themselves in the GT1 era, on multiple occasions even. First there was the Dauer, which was just a Group C Porsche 962 that the small German tuner Dauer had turned into a road car. Porsche then took this road car and re-homologated it again as a GT1 car, and used it to win the 1994 24 Hours of Le Mans. Then, 2 years later, they came up with the 911 GT1, which again was a 962 underneath, with only a little bit of the front chassis of a 993 generation 911 bolted onto it. And Porsche built 25 road versions of it to comply with the minimum amount necessary. By 1998 this amount was lowered to just 1, so Porsche and everyone else went wild. Some, like Nissan with its R390, realized they didn't even have to sell one, so they just kept it for themselves and put it in a museum. But there was one GT1 class car that took this even further, as it didn't even have a road car to go with it. I'm talking about the Cintura S99. A rapid, fully carbon fiber monster with an F1 derived Judd V10, with exactly 0 road legal variants. How did they do this? Simple. While the rules stated you had to build one road car, it never said that road car could then be turned into the race car. So that's what Cintura did. They built one race car, showed it to the officials claiming it was gonna be the road car, and in the background put up a bunch of bodywork under a tarp claiming that was the race car. The officials fell for it, and Cintura successfully bluffed their way into British GT and a round of the American Le Mans series. To end this video, let's take a look at the latest homologation special, the Toyota GR Yaris. Beloved by everyone as it harkens back to the glory days of rallying, but what if I told you the Yaris is a homologation special that ended up being unnecessary? When Toyota returned to WRC in 2017, they had to use a Yaris road car chassis straight from the production line. This was the rule, and that's why it looked quite ridiculous with its absurdly high roofline compared to the Ford and Hyundai. Toyota wanted a lower roofline, but couldn't change it due to the regulations. This was an issue and was one of the main reasons why the GR Yaris was needed, to get rid of the rally car's massive forehead. Toyota would build the GR Yaris and then use its chassis to build a rally car with it. That car was tested and would have raced in the 2021 season, but we all know what happened in that year, so the car never raced. Instead, Toyota raced one more year with the old Yaris. You may ask yourself what I'm even on about, as there is a GR Yaris competing in WRC right now, and you're right. But that's been built under the new Hybrid Rally 1 regulations. Those regulations now use a standard roll cage or so-called safety cell all brands share. They can then put bodywork around it and dress it up to make it look like any of their road cars. With the previous regulations, this was the other way around. This is why the Rally Ford Puma has totally different dimensions compared to the road car Ford Puma. This bodywork stretching wouldn't have been possible with the previous rules. This also means that the GR Yaris and its lower roofline wasn't needed in the end, as with these new rules they could have picked any of their hatchbacks and changed its dimensions for the rally car. Luckily, all the effort wasn't for nothing, as Toyota only recently finally decided to make a lower class Rally 2 car based on the GR Yaris, and those cars are still based on a production chassis. And there you have it, a quick look at the wacky world of homologation specials. There are plenty more out there I didn't cover in this video, so do feel free to mention your personal favorite one in the comments. And if you want to see more motorsport related stories, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one.